everyone, I'm Barker-Stargazer and welcome to one of my many crochet videos. This week's crochet video is going to be a tapestry based crochet video. Now, you may ask, you've done a few tapestries before, I've seen these, how is this different, blah 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 blah. Now what makes this different from the types of tapestry I've done before is that this time I am going to be working off cross stitch patterns which I have found free on Pinterest. Now cross stitch patterns work on a grid and they look almost identical to crochet grid patterns, like something if you're working a particular corner to corner crochet, they tend to work very much on grid patterns. But typically crochet stitches aren't perfect squares. There is a way to create a perfect square, but it does use up quite a lot of yarn, and I will probably end up doing this technique as the last one in the video, just so I can get a good feel for all of these. So what I want to do with this video is to see if it is plausible to use a cross stitch grid for a crochet tapestry piece, and if anything needs modifying to aid this working, say tweaking a stitch here and there, or if the grid itself needs to be changed. Now, changing the cross stitch grid is something I don't want to go into unless I absolutely have to, unless I can find like no alternative to make this work. So I am going to start off with this crochet grid here, and I am going to use standard double crochets. That's UK terms, so if you're US it's standard single crochets in making this. And first thing I'm going to do is draw it on my own graph paper so I'm not continuously squinting trying to count all these little squares. So already with this first one, just running double crochets back and forth, I am starting to see an issue. My double crochets, while to the naked eye they may look almost square, they're not. They don't seem to have the height that they would need. They're definitely wide enough, but say the height isn't there, and it's really starting to show. Oh, thank the crochet gods, I'm just down to 2 colours now. Jesus, this is all getting tangled. I've decided that I'm going to frame this one. So I'm going to take this frame apart and put my crochet image inside. And oh my, somebody's all photos here. Oh, wow. Right, if you recognise anyone here or it's you, give me a private message if you want these photos sent to you. Right, sorry, back to the image. I'm going to use fabric glue to fix my image to the background, which I'm going to paint black to match the outer woodwork of the frame and the main tree details, the palm tree details of the image. Yeah, I was right. I've tried stretching this and blocking it to extend the height of the stitches, but yeah, they're just overstretched. The whole image is just too squashed. Yeah, so this hasn't really worked. So I think the next one I'm going to try UK half trebles instead of the UK double crochets. Okay, right. Need to find my next image. Right, so remembering if you are doing anything off a grid, your foundation stitch needs to have additional chains on it to compensate for the height of your stitch going forward into row 1. So here, the base of my image is 48 stitches, and as I am going to be using a half treble, I'll need to add 2 extra stitches onto the end. With the previous one, I only needed to add 1 extra stitch to the end of the chain because I was only using a UK double. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm right here. This half treble is creating more of a square to correspond to the square you would create with stitching from cross stitch. So I think this is going to turn out right. I think I'm going to turn this one into a cushion because I am working in Aran weight equivalent yarn, and I am using a 4.5, so it's going to turn out a lot bigger than the image one I did. So yeah, I think this will make a lovely cushion. I still do want to try another stitch, so I am still going to do a third tapestry here, and then we can compare all 3 at the end. Right, so the back of this cushion, I've just created an envelope fold, and I've simply used the leftover yarn I had in these colours, so that's why it's all just a big jumble. And I will find a cushion to put into it by the end of this video. Right, the third technique I want to use is something that Complicated Knots used in her big tapestry piece that she did, where she outlined all of her videos that she's done so far in her great big blanket wall hanger. So it does create absolutely perfect squares. So if you wanted to crochet a flat piece and then go and crochet onto it, this would definitely be the method to use. However, I've had mixed results trying to use tapestry with it in the past. I particularly find that doing lettering tapestry work, it just hasn't worked for me. I am curious if it will work using a cross stitch grid pattern, if it will work better. So I'll have a look. Basically, this technique, you are only working on the right side of your work. Normally in crochet, when we're making a flat piece, we work on one side. Usually our first row is our right side facing work. So the stitch that we're making, we make sure that everything is quite neat and tidy on the front. Then we turn and we work along the back of our piece. This method kind of eliminates the working back. So what you do is you start with a chain, and your first row is your standard row of either single crochet or UK double crochet. You get to the end of that row, row 1, you turn, but then your second row is made up completely of slip stitches, only worked in the front loop only of your stitch. You do that all the way along back to the beginning of row 1. Then you chain 1, turn, and that's when you would move on to the second line of your graph, or in this case, the cross stitch grid. Right, so I'm going to go with this image, but when I translated it, I've actually squished it down just so it fits on my graph paper and I'm not using up as much yarn with all this background colour. So like the heart at the top here, I've moved it down several rows, but it shouldn't affect. So basically, I'll show you here. Row 1 is straight across, working this way. Then I have slip stitched all the way back, and then I've begun row 2 working this way. Then I've slip stitched all the way back. If I was going to write a pattern using this method, I wouldn't count the slip stitches as rows. I don't know how anyone else would put that, because literally I've only really seen complicated knots using it. So I haven't actually stumbled across any patterns using it. Also want to show you, so this is the right side of my work and this is the wrong side. Now I have tried to catch the yarn as I've worked subsequent rows, and it has resulted in quite some bulk, which has translated to the front here, which I'm not entirely happy about. So I'm not entirely happy about that. But as we say, this video was about pros and cons of all these different techniques. I always freak out when I get to parts like this in patterns where you've got so many colours going on and so many shifts from one colour to another. It just all looks a mess, but I know it'll work out. Just got to keep going through it. Okay, here are the 3 finished results. So this first one was done using UK doubles, that's US singles, and the height isn't right. It's too overstretched. Trying to block it and get it, it's too squashed. So that way it didn't work. The half trebles, however, do have the height, and I think they've worked absolutely lovely. The piece is very flexible, so I could use this technique and create anything from scarves to blankets. And our last technique, which was working slip stitches across the back of our work every other row, has definitely created the crispest image However, I'm not happy with the bulk. The bulk would limit what I can do with the finished images here. If this was simply a wall hanging, or maybe like the side of a bag, it would work. It would be brilliant. But it's just the bulk. It creates a stiffness in your work, and if you want your work to be something that is going to be, say, like a scarf or a blanket, where you are going to be able to see both sides, you're going to have extra bulk just to capture in your traveling yarn. So, summary. Can you use cross-stitch grids to create crochet images? Yes. But you've got to be careful with what you want your end result for. If you're just creating a wall hanging, use technique number 3, where you are slip stitching along the back of your work. If you want something a bit more flexible, use half trebles. Because I think that's what I'm going to do going forward with these, because I have saved loads of them now. And I actually want to get up to the point where I can create this image here on a blanket. Alright guys, I will see you next video. Bye!